from Patter Cake, the channel that's about baking and much more. A warm welcome to my channel. Da-da-da, da-da-da, soon it will be Christmas Day. Yes, it's that time of the year, folks, when in the air, once again, there's a feeling of Christmas. And of course, the aroma of Christmas sweets. So which sweet are we making today? Scrumptious date rolls. A hot favorite, especially among the Catholic community of Bombay, now Mumbai. These little treats have a buttery, short crust pastry outside and a delicious surprise filling of dates and nuts inside. And I can't wait to show you how I make them. I have two ways, and I'm going to show you both of them right here at Patter Cake. Now we'll start with the pastry. In this bowl, I have half a cup plus 1 tablespoon, that's 125 grams of salted butter. That's almost at room temperature. We'll first whip it. I'm going to use a wooden spoon, but you could also do this with a whisk or spatula if you want. The butter shouldn't be hard. You should be able to press it down easily like this. Let's whip it up. And then add half a cup, that's 60 grams of powdered sugar to it. And cream the mix till it's nice and fluffy. Next, we'll add in an egg and whip everything again. And then add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and whip the mix yet again. In this bowl, I have 2 cups or 250 grams of maida or all-purpose flour that I have sifted. And to it, I'll add 2 tablespoons of milk powder. Let's mix the two well. And then we'll add this to the earlier bowl in 3 parts. Now I bring the dough together with my hand. We shouldn't knead this dough vigorously. Let's just bring the dough together, pressing it into a firm, non-sticky ball, like this. If the dough seems too dry, add a few teaspoons of cold milk to it. If it feels too sticky, mix a few teaspoons of maida into it. We'll now divide this dough into 2 parts. Let's pat each one roughly into a flat, rectangular shape. You could wrap each of these in cling film or parchment paper. We'll have to then rest this dough in the fridge for around 20 to 30 minutes. In the meanwhile, we'll start preparing the filling. I'll prepare 2 different kinds of fillings. For both fillings, we need dates. So let's de-seed some by slicing the dates open and removing the seed. These are medjool dates, which are larger in size than the more common red dates available in India. So we'll use just half a date for each date roll. If you have smaller dates, however, use 1 date for each date roll. Here I have around 350 grams of de-seeded dates. They are around 20 dates, and we'll use half of them for each of our 2 fillings. Besides dates, for both the fillings I'm going to use cashew nuts. These are lightly roasted and they weigh around 50 grams. But we'll use around half of them for each kind of filling. I'm also going to use walnuts in both fillings. But instead of walnuts, you could also use lightly roasted almonds. If you have walnut kernel halves like these, you'll have to slice each of them into 2 parts. I've already cut a few kernel halves into quarters. These weigh around 50 grams. And we'll use roughly half of them for each filling. For the first filling, we'll just stuff a date with an intact cashew nut or a walnut piece. Let me show you how to stuff the date halves. Let's first stuff a date half with a walnut piece. Like this. Now let's stuff another one with a cashew nut. Like this. I'm going to make around 10 of each of these date centers as our first filling. The rest of the cashew nuts and walnuts will have to be finely chopped or coarsely ground for the second filling. For the second filling, we need to mash the dates by first heating 2 teaspoons of ghee on medium heat. To the melted ghee, we'll add the other half of the de-seeded dates. And saute these for a few minutes till the dates soften. This took barely 5 minutes. Here's our mix of chopped cashew nuts and walnuts. And here are the mashed dates. Let's mix the two. And here we have our second kind of filling. We'll divide this into 2 or 3 parts and shape each into a long rope or log, around 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Let's keep these aside and start making the first kind of date rolls. Here's the baking tray I've prepared for the first lot by lining it with parchment paper. After 20 minutes, I took the first dough portion out of the fridge and then let it warm up a little for around 5 to 6 minutes outside the fridge. I'll now unwrap it. Let's dust the cutting board very lightly with maida. And then cut the dough into 2 parts. We'll start with the first part by flattening and then rolling it out into a rectangular shape. We have to roll this out as thinly as possible and with even pressure. We don't want the sheet to be thicker in the center and thinner on the sides. But don't worry if the dough develops cracks along the edges. That's how it will be. The dough sheet should be only slightly thicker than a chapati. If it's too thick, you won't be able to roll it up to make date rolls. Let's measure the length of a stuffed date with a scale or ruler. It's 1.5 inches in length. Now let's cut strips 1.5 inches broad to match the length of the stuffed dates. I'll make the 1.5 inch markings first. And then use the scale to make straight cuts through these markings. Let's place a date towards one end of the strip and then carefully roll the dough strip around the date and cut the strip so that the 2 ends overlap slightly. Let's seal the joint and place the date roll on the baking tray with the seam side down. Let's make another date roll. I'll continue making date rolls with the other strips and the scraps of dough, and also with the second half which I had set aside after cutting the dough rectangle into 2 parts. Here are all the date rolls I made with the first rectangular portion of dough. We'll now put this baking tray in the fridge for around 15 minutes. Chilling the date rolls before baking them will ensure the date rolls maintain their shape while they're getting baked. After 15 minutes in the fridge, I'll brush the tops of the date rolls with milk so they can develop a pale brown color while they're baking. I'll bake these in my preheated oven at 180 degrees centigrade, that's around 350 Fahrenheit, for around 20 minutes or till the date rolls are pale brown on top. In the meanwhile, let's shape our second kind of date rolls. After taking this second rectangular dough portion out of the fridge, I had let it sit at room temperature for 5 to 6 minutes, just like I had done with the first one. I now cut it into 2 parts. Let's lightly dust the board with maida and then roll this first half of the dough out as thinly as possible, just like before, maintaining the rectangular shape. I had made 2 date ropes for the second kind of filling. One is small and the other is a longer one. I'll now place the smaller date rope along the length of the dough sheet and roll the dough over it, slicing it off once the rope is completely covered and seeing that the 2 edges overlap slightly. Let's seal the joint. We'll now roll the covered date rope with gentle pressure. And then cut off segments 1.5 inches long to match the length of our earlier date rolls. We'll set these down on our second baking tray with the seam side down. Similarly, let's cut date rolls out of the rest of the covered date rope. Remember to neaten the cut edges of the date rolls before placing them on the baking tray. Here are all the date rolls we shaped using the second filling and the second rectangular dough portion. I've decided to add a design element to these using a fork. See how you like it. I'll now chill these two in the fridge for 15 minutes, then brush their tops with milk and then bake them too at 180 degrees centigrade or 350 Fahrenheit. After 22 minutes of baking time, our first batch of date rolls is out of the oven. These have baked beautifully. And here's our second batch, looking equally good as the first one. Don't these look so tempting? But wait, let's take things up a notch by dusting them with powdered sugar. Besides, this way I'm also simulating a white Christmas for you. How cool is that? And you know what? These date rolls would also make a wonderful Christmas gift for your loved ones, a wonderful and delicious homemade one. Finally, let me show you how our date rolls look inside by cutting through the layers of pastry, dates and nuts. These are truly tasty bites of goodness packed with energy, right? No matter which way you decide to make them, these tasty date rolls would make an excellent addition to your Christmas sweets platter. Honestly. And if you found this video useful in any way, do show your support to my channel by giving this video a thumbs up, leaving a comment or becoming a subscriber. See you in my next video. Until we meet again, take care and happy cooking.